Hi, and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today, we are going to be talking about the Oak Ridges Moraine, and we're going to talk about the greenbelt. It's all pretty prominent in the news right now that the Conservative government, with Bill 23, has allowed some of the lands designated as greenbelt and supposedly protected forever to be released for development. It's a very touchy subject and one that we should all be interested in. And before we can get really interested and invested in it, we have to know what it is. So according to the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust website, our moraine, the Oak Ridges Moraine, is 12,000 years old, 160 kilometers long, and covers over 470,000 acres and is part of Ontario's greenbelt. At almost 2 million acres, the greenbelt is the world's largest permanently protected greenbelt, offering over 325 kilometers from Rice Lake in the Oak Ridges Moraine to Tobermory to the Niagara River. It keeps our farmlands, forest, and wetlands safe and sustainable and provides fresh air, clean water, and healthy local food. What could be better than that? Isn't that something that is well worth protecting? Today we'll hear from Mark Carroll, who is actually live on Main Street in a protest against Bill 23 with a whole lot of people, and there's horn honking and things like that going on. But hey, that's what a protest demonstration is, and that's what it's all about, people supporting them by honking on their way by. Following that, we will hear from Susan Walmer, who is the CEO of the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. I hope that this show inspires you to get involved and, at the very least, get to know the Oak Ridges Moraine and the fabulous greenbelt. First up, we're going to hear a little piece from the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust website that explains what the moraine is. And it's a really interesting little piece. I encourage you to go to their website. There are many different websites with lots of great information about there. So sit down with your tablet or your computer and Google around a bit and find out what you can about the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust and the greenbelt.
The last 2 million years has seen Canada and the northern U.S. locked in an ice age, with glaciers continually advancing and retreating over the landscape. The Wisconsin glaciation was the last major ice advance, which covered most of Canada and parts of the northern U.S. In some parts of Ontario, the ice was over 2 kilometers thick. As the glaciers began to retreat and melting progressed, the ice divided into two lobes, forming a distinct crack that ran along the future ridgeline of the Oak Ridges Moraine. Torrential flood channels developed beneath the melting ice, carrying sediments and dumping them into the crack. These formed the initial core of the moraine. The flood channels can be seen today as the well-defined valley systems of the Holland River, Black River, and Pefferlaw Brook. Initially, water also collected in the trough held in by the ice slopes and by the high land of the Niagara Escarpment. This water eventually drained away to the south and southwest along meltwater channels. As the ice finally pulled away, it left a giant accumulation of tills and stratified silt, sand, and gravel in the former trough, forming a more or less continuous 160-kilometer-long ridge from the Niagara Escarpment almost to the Trent River. Although the ice had left the vicinity of the Oak Ridges Moraine, it acted as a dam that prevented meltwaters from draining away. The result was two large glacial lakes, Lake Iroquois, where Ontario would be, and giant Lake Algonquin, whose shores far overspread the future Great Lakes, Huron, and Michigan. The ice sheets and giant glacial lakes finally shrank away, but the Oak Ridges Moraine remains as a prominent landform in southern Ontario, up to 200 meters thick and rising to over 300 meters above Lake Ontario. By 9,000 years ago, the ice sheets had retreated well to the north, and some plants had returned to the area of the Oak Ridges Moraine. Small, hardy tundra vegetation followed on the heels of the glacier, but this quickly gave way to coniferous forests occupied by the spruce, fir, and pine species that are currently found in the boreal forests of northern Ontario. 6,000 years ago, the Oak Ridges Moraine was already dominated by the towering oaks and maples that sheltered countless wildlife species, as well as the nomadic tribes of Ontario's first people. It was this landscape that greeted the first European settlers just over 400 years ago.
Wow, that's just fascinating. Let's hear from Mark Carroll, standing on the side of the road in Whitchurch Stouffville. Hi, right now I'm talking to Mark Carroll, and you're standing at the corner of Sanderford and Main Street. Is that where you
Yes,
are?
That's where we are right now, yeah.
Okay, and what are you doing there?
We are protesting Bill 23. We're getting lots of support from the residents that are driving by, and we have lots of people here. So we believe that Bill 23 is a mistake. It's a broken promise again by our politicians, and we need them to repeal this. And it's for the health of Southern Ontario. So.
Okay, now when you're standing there on the corner, are people honking and waving and showing their support that way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were getting lots of support down here.
Okay, that's great to hear. Now, what is it about Bill 23 that you don't like?
Everything. So, we understand that we're going to grow in population in Southern Ontario and that we need houses. But the urban sprawl that's being predicted through Bill 23 is wrong. It's going to destroy Southern Ontario through pollution of our waterways, pollution of our air. It's the wrong message that we're sending to the rest of the world here that are trying to get hold of climate change, and we're just going to create more.
Yeah.
So everything about Bill 23 is just wrong.
Yeah, I find it kind of ironic that it was the Conservative government that put the greenbelt plan into action in 2001, and they're the government that's taking lands out of it and saying, yeah, no, only kidding. We're going to develop them.
Yeah, I was on the picket lines and in the meetings when they did the Oak Ridges Moraine Act in 2000, and we explained to them that the science for the Oak Ridges Moraine is done. It's there, and they can't say, well, the science isn't there for that we can make changes in the lines. As you can hear, the support that we're getting.
It's fantastic.
They can't go back and say, well, the science isn't there for it. It is here for it, and they need to abide by the science that's been done for the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Greenbelt. And for them to say, well, we can change the lines here and there and stuff, it's not great. Hazel McCallion, who's the chair of the Greenbelt committee, she's wrong as well. You can't make changes because the way she says that, it's just because it's right beside other development. The Greenbelt was there to make a buffer for all our Oak Ridges Moraine and all the rest of the Greenbelt. So.
Now, she's got a lot of support and a lot of fans. I'm surprised that she's saying, yeah, it's okay.
Well, that's her last statement about the Greenbelt. She became the chair, and she has said that, yes, we can make changes in the Greenbelt.
Well, I guess we can make changes to anything, but only when those changes are well thought out, well considered, correct, and are done with the best intentions, not just for the intentions of development and more cash in certain people's pockets.
Yeah, that's the perception right now, and it's it is founded. The committee that is put the direction for this Bill 23 was all development oriented. There was 2 members from the Build, which is the building industry. There was a member from, there was a couple of members from the Real Estate Association who, yes, they want to sell houses, right? They want to sell the $1 million houses because they get the commission from those.
Right.
Right. There was one gentleman there from Habitat for Humanity. Great. We need houses for, we need affordable houses, and we need to be able to build houses for people who can't afford houses. But what they're doing, or what Bill 23 proposes, is nothing but urban sprawl, and it's not going to bring the price of houses down.
No, that's my point, is it's not going to bring the prices of houses down. It's not going to solve the housing crisis. And for us to be using precious lands like that, when there are a lot of other places where you can build, we should be looking at other alternatives than tearing apart the Greenbelt.
Well, I look at what's happening here in Whitchurch Stouffville. it's just more urban sprawl. When you drive through Stouffville, down through Hoover Park or through Millard and further on, you get off of Main Street, you just have urban sprawl. There's nothing different. There's no affordable houses in those areas. There's no services for those houses that are being built in those areas. So it's all car-oriented subdivisions, which is just creating just more havoc on our streets and more havoc with our environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that you were able to talk to us today. And if people want more information about how they can get involved in these demonstrations and the things that you're putting together, how do they find out where they can get involved?
Well, right now we do have the website, Whitchurch Stouffville Council Discussions. That's up and running for us. That's where it's kind of started from. Charlene Jones is the administrator for that, so it's not a town Facebook page.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a Facebook page and not a website.
No, sorry, we had to organize this real quick, and so that's where we're standing right now. But we're trying to get a website out as soon as we can and get this a little bit better organized. But the Environmental Defense Organization is kind of the lead on this. So if they look up the Environmental Defense Association on the website, that's where the fight for Bill 23 originated.
Okay. And also, there's other organizations, too, which we will mention in the show later on, like the York Region Environmental Alliance and places like that.
Oh, there's all kinds right now, yeah. Storm is coming back, Save the Oak Ridges Moraine. We're I'm hoping it comes back to the forefront as well because, they were the ones who took the lead on saving the Oak Ridges Moraine. So they're still involved in this.
Mm-hmm. And we need people to get involved, don't we? It shouldn't be the same handful of people sitting on all of these different organizations. It needs to be a lot of people getting involved and a lot of voices heard.
Yeah, we're looking for the youth to get out involved because it's their futures that's at stake here. I'm an older guy in here. In 100 years, I'm not going to be around, but in 100 years, I'm going to have grandkids that are still on this planet. I really don't know what their future is going to be like when they're my age, right? So,
we need to start thinking in the future. And I think what the Ford government is doing right now, the conservative government, because it's not Ford's government, it's everybody's government. But what the conservative government is doing right now is very short-sighted, I think.
Oh, yes, very short-sighted. It's only looking till 2032. It's not saying, okay, well, yes, we're developing to 2051, but you know what? They're not looking at 100 years from now.
And they're not understanding the precious resource that water really is. And
no.
Anyway, well, thanks again.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, I need you to go back out and get that message across to as many people as you possibly can. Thanks again, Mark.
Okay, I appreciate the call.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, that was Mark Carroll. He was one of the candidates for mayor in the town of Whitchurch Stouffville. And I think a lot of politicians need to start getting on board. A lot of local municipalities need to start having their voices heard in a very positive way. It's hard to stand up to the big brother of the provincial government. But this time, we really need to speak out, and these lands need to be protected. And if the government has some sort of master plan that they're working towards, I think they need to do a better job of conveying that to the people around them. Now I'd like to get back into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, how the Land Trust can protect precious lands like the Oak Ridges Moraine, and what they're doing to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine. Before we get into our interview with Susan Walmer, we have to take a little break here on Freshwaves. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. Hi, this is Bren, host of Freshwaves. You know, Freshwaves is a broadcast and a podcast. If you'd like to share a story with us, or if you have something that you think we'd love to hear, then drop me a line. It's Bren@freshwaves.ca. Bren@freshwaves.ca. If you'd like to hear this broadcast and podcast again, go to our YouTube channel, Freshwaves Radio. Now, back to the show. Hi, and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we're speaking with Susan Walmer. She's the CEO of the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. How are you?
Great, thanks. And you?
Just wonderful.
Well, we're all a little sad that some pieces of legislation have been passed recently that make us wonder about the safety and security of our green spaces, especially here in York Region, and especially on the Oak Ridges Moraine, which we know is very sensitive land and very, very precious land, let's say. So I'd like to start by letting the listeners know, what is the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust?
Good question, and we get that often from people who are contacting us. When they see the Oak Ridges Moraine in our name, they think we're all sorts of multitude of different things. But our main purpose is to protect land on or near the Oak Ridges Moraine, and typically sensitive and ecologically important lands. We do that in a number of different ways, typically working with landowners who either wish to donate their lands, fee simple, so the entire property, or if they would like to put a conservation easement on their property that protects the natural features, and or if they want to do a mixture of different things or leave a legacy gift of their land. So quite often, those are different options that will go through with landowners, and then we protect those lands forever. So they're held in trust through the land trust, and we are governed by a board of directors. So those directors are responsible for keeping those lands protected in perpetuity.
Wow, that sounds like a mammoth task.
It is, and there's a lot of land out there that needs to be protected. I was involved with the Oak Ridges Moraine advocacy back in the 1990s when there wasn't protection on these key natural features, but all of the studies were coming out from the province analyzing those parts of the moraine and how they were formed from the glaciers, 12,000 years ago, and why it is so important for all of the people living south of the Oak Ridges Moraine down into York Region and down into Toronto, and all of the people north up into Simcoe and up to Lake Simcoe, and how important that geographical and geological feature is for our health and safety.
And can you give us some highlights of why the moraine is so important to us?
Absolutely. The main thing on the moraine is water. We all need water, and as we can tell from the climate change impacts that are happening all around the world, water can be a positive or a negative. In our situation here in the moraine, it was built by glaciers moving forward and backwards in the last ice ages, so 12,000 years ago. And as they receded, they left a lot of natural sand, but they also left pockets of sort of glacial pools that melted and became these little kettle lakes that we have. They also feed all of the rivers going north and south. So the moraine is like a divide. If you're ever driving along, say, Bloomington Road, that kind of is the divide, the height of the land. And if you look south, you can actually see the city and all of it, and it slopes downwards. And then as you go over that hump, it's the same way as it goes, it slopes down towards Lake Simcoe. So it's that protective divide that has created all of that water features and sand and soil that we use for a multitude of different purposes.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because Lemonville is just south of Bloomington, and it has all of those artesian wells, and there just seems to be water everywhere there.
That's right. Different features across the moraine, but I think the key thing that binds it all together is that creation of water and those water reserves that we so desperately need. Communities used to use the aquifers all the time. Now we have to bring in other water because we don't want to use it all up. So there's a mixture often in a number of communities of the aquifer water and pumped in water.
So what is a land trust? I mean, you just gave us a basic definition, but people just donate land to you? That sounds preposterous.
Isn't it wild? Well, we actually, I think the message for people, and when we go out and talk to people, or if we're involved in discussions with all of the various regions across the Moraine, is that we are protection beyond legislation, which is really critical at this point in time in Ontario, particularly because legislation is changing. Mm-hmm. And we had thought and hoped when the Land Trust was first formed in 2000, that was right around the time when the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Act came into place. So we were there as an extra safety measure. They had put in a lot of protected features over key natural features, done a lot of studies at the government level with a lot of environmentalists involved in that. And we're protecting the key features. So we formed as another group that could protect beyond legislation. So if people wanted to go beyond the legislation and protect their lands privately to make sure that they were protected forever, they came to us, and we went to them and said, you've got some key features. Can we help you protect them? So what we can offer to people is, first of all, a very generous donation receipt for any lands that they do donate. And they can donate it in several different ways. They could donate it fee simple. So if they wish, they can donate the entire parcel of land. And sometimes that happens through estates. Sometimes that will happen in a will. Someone will say, okay, I'm going to stay here until, and then I want you to donate the land. Often it will happen as a conservation easement, which is a tool that is placed on land to protect features. And
okay, can we stop there just for a second?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm not understanding what that is. So if I had one of the artesian wells on my property, or I had one of these kettle lakes, I could have just that piece protected?
Typically, yeah. So what we would do is we would look at the entire parcel. We would usually carve out and decide with the landowner what would be a residential area that would be allowed for them to still have their residential uses. So a house, barns if it's a farm, any other amenities would be in that area. And typically that area is already kind of a developed area. And then often on properties on the Oak Ridges Moraine, there would be, like I said, a well or a little kettle lake or wetland or a feature like that. And we would go and look at the rest of the property and look at a sort of a natural heritage assessment and determine that these are the features that needed to be protected. And here were some of the covenants that would protect them. The very first one is that it doesn't get subdivided at all for any future development. And again, in today's environment in Ontario, that's very important because it's held by the conservation easement is actually a program through the Ecological Gift Program of Canada, which is run by the federal government, and the federal government is the body that holds that easement along with us to make sure that that land stays forever protected.
So you could theoretically sell the property, but you would sell it with this easement, and whoever buys the property knows that this easement is protecting a sensitive area and that they can't mess with it.
That's exactly right. And it usually does attract owners that want to have some natural area around them protected forever. Sometimes we do get calls from lawyers the night before a property is closing and they finally pulled title, and because easement is registered on title, and they go, oh, what's a conservation easement? What does this mean? And, there's some panic phone calls back and forth with lawyers and owners. And quite often, because the owners, if they're looking in a countryside area with, natural area around them and forests, like you indicated you've got on your property, that's what they want. They want it protected forever. So as long as it doesn't impede their uses, and as long as they follow the covenants that are on there, it's a great relationship. So we go out right after someone buys the property and goes through all of the covenants with them. Their lawyers should do that prior to them buying it.
You would think.
You would think, but we go out to sort of put that friendly face to it and say, look, we're part of helping you protect this land. Here's all the covenants. We will come out and go through and monitor the property with them, usually on an annual basis, either in person or over the phone. And we encourage them to phone us before they're going to do anything on the property. So then there's clauses in there. If you're planning on doing anything, call us, talk to us, and make sure that it meets the easement.
Wow, it sounds really complicated, but I guess once you just get into it, it's pretty simple. And I'm liking the idea of a land trust, because I've often looked at the rainforest situation, for example, and thought, why doesn't somebody just buy it? One of these multi-billionaires that you hear about that have more money than God himself, why don't they just buy it? The people are doing what they're doing. They're destroying it because they want money. So buy it and give them the money. I don't know. To me, it sounds so simple, so it must not be that simple.
Well, I think there's human use of land, and as human beings on this planet, that's what we've done is use the land and water, sometimes to survive, right? Other times for farming practices, other times for things that maybe are not quite so wonderful for the environment. So there's a reason to be able to have to protect it legally. And I don't know if, from a conservation easement perspective, I was actually just watching a show called Yellowstone that is on Montana. And one of the things that they just did on the show I was watching last night is they put a conservation easement on this valley because developers came in and wanted to put an airport there. And I went, yes, this is what we did in Pickering, except that now those easements have been removed. So
they've been removed. So how does that happen? Is that a government regulated thing?
Well, you see, this is why we use the federal government. There's very few reasons why the federal government, who helps us hold and through us, we hold the easement, but it's endorsed by the federal government, would agree to an easement being removed. So that's what we do. Unfortunately, the easements in the Pickering Ag Reserve, my understanding, was held by the Pickering Council, and they, through a number of different years and applications through people, decided that they would remove those easements. And then, as we know, if everyone's been reading the paper, that a large developer has bought those lands, and now they're potentially being opened up for redesignation to be part of our housing crisis solution. So it's a really difficult thing, because we all understand and we feel for people that need more housing, and the statistics seem to be clear that we need more housing, but I don't think we need them up in key significant areas that have been protected, for a number of years and for very valid reasons. We need to look at more intensification, not going out into lands that are very sensitive lands, wetlands, and areas that have been protected for a number of years, and start building homes there, because I don't think they're going to be looking at intensification. There's nothing around that area to service homes. It's a sprawl. It's going to sprawl.
It's very, very sad in my books. I mean, I look at these things and I think, how short-sighted are we? I mean, why can't we see past the end of our own noses and realize that when you build houses on Class A farmland, you don't have enough food. And when you destroy a water source as precious as the Oak Ridges Moraine, you don't have any water to drink. It seems so basic, and I don't understand why. I guess it's money. It all boils down to the almighty dollar, as it always has, but it just doesn't seem to be a very thoughtful thing for people to be doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what's particularly disturbing is that when the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act came in place, it was the conservative government that was in power at that point in time that brought it forward. And it had all party support. So every party supported it. That was only in 2000. that's not that long ago. Things have not changed. And I think, a matter of fact, people and parties and representatives that we elect have become even more aware of how important our natural environment is, land and water and food. When we look around the world and see what climate change has already impacted in other areas of the world, that eventually will come our way. And we need to have all of these resources. As you know, as you've mentioned, the farmland is particularly critical, and the water is key to providing us with clean drinking water. So I don't understand. I think it's very short-sighted. I think that this is, reversing a decision that all parties made over, 20 years ago in 2000. And I don't see the need for it. And I think you're right. I think it has more to do with profit and rather than looking at long-term protection.
Yeah, I'm sure the housing situation is extremely complex. I'm not trying to belittle how complex that housing crisis is. But I often look at Europe as an example and think, okay, people don't own their own homes. They own a flat. They own a part of a home. They live in villages that are really squashed together. Let's squish together a bit more. Like maybe we don't need 2-acre estate properties. Maybe we need smaller lots. Something has to be done that's not taking away land from the Oak Ridges Moraine, the protected land. So I think what you do is really interesting. Have you ever had someone literally donate hundreds of acres?
Not hundreds yet, but we do have 13 nature reserves, and that people have donated outright, and about 500 acres in total.
Wow.
Those are, like I said, either through bequests or through various options that people have looked at when they're looking at their finances. And we don't. So we're a little bit different than the conservation authorities. And we know they've been impacted by Bill 23. So we don't have open public nature reserves. We have private nature reserves that are typically for environmental purposes, and we open them to the public under guided tours, guided hikes. So we've seen what's happened, and we all know we need to be out in nature. York Region has amazing trails, as do the conservation authorities, but we all saw how they were overwhelmed during the pandemic, and that caused a lot of garbage, a lot of impact on the natural features in those lands, negatively impacted them. And so what we try to do is to take the properties that we have and protect them for nature, for species at risk that might be in the area. And typically those lands are donated because they do have species at risk on them. And then like you said, we open them up to people through an invitation to come and see a nature reserve that isn't public, but will be open for special events. So that's how we manage our nature reserves. And then the other component of our lands that we protect are the conservation easements. And those are privately owned lands, like I said, that owners let us come on and monitor, and often will let us have events on them as well. So with the cooperation of those owners, if they have key natural features, one of them has a kettle lake, and we'll hold special events on them. We also have some joint ownerships, one with York Region Forest in King Township, and they manage it. It's a public trail system, but we're a partner on it. So there's a lot of different scenarios where we try to work with partners to protect those lands, and conservation authorities are one of our partners. So we're still trying to figure out what happens, if anything, to those lands and how they'll end up being protected. So lots of things up in the air right now in terms of land protection.
So how can people help? I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I want to do something.
Well, if you believe in protecting land, certainly reach out to the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. We have a website where you can take a look at what we do, and we do have a lot of campaigns that are on right now, where we're trying to raise money for protecting more land. So there's certainly, the action to give. There's also actions where you can join and see our webinars on demand and learn more about how you can protect nature and learn more about the nature that's there on the various lands that we live on. So there's those types of Zoom webinars. There's also workshops and events where you can come out and, like I said, go on a private hike with us, or sometimes we'll have an amazing event we did last year that I loved was a moth event at night. And we put up large sheets and large lights at night. And how you have a few moths that might bang against your door. You open it, if you turn the light on outside and you see moths. Well, this was magnificent because they were on this big white sheet, and there were literally hundreds of different types of moths. I had no idea there was that many outside. Wow. So events like that, which we'll do, or with our program director Aileen Barkley, which I think you've had her on before. Yep. She's amazing with getting people out and experiencing new things, like a coyote howl walk. Where we'll go and see if we can find coyotes and things like that I think people don't really know about, how to do that, and that land shouldn't be frightening. It shouldn't be frightening to be out on the land. It should be you're in tune with nature and respectful to it, learning more about it, because we really do have to live with nature if we're going to survive as a human race. We have to be able to be cognizant that our actions will impact nature, and sometimes in a negative way. And we need to see how we can reverse that if we all want to share this planet going forward.
I agree with you. So if someone donates money to the land trust, and the land trust accumulates some cash, I know it takes a lot of money to manage land is not as easy as it seems. There are a lot of expenses involved, including taxes, I imagine. Or do you guys have to pay taxes on the land that you own?
It depends. We have a reduced rate on the lands that we own. So most of it will get covered by the Conservation Land Tax Incentive Program. But that's a program that's run by the provincial government that is still in place, and we're hoping it will stay in place. But we didn't think that they would take the Oak Ridges Moraine Act and redesignate lands that had been agreed to, protection over 20 years ago. So right now it's covered by a program, and I'm really hoping that the government will decide that program is worth keeping. Wow. Because that would add a huge extra burden onto land trusts across Ontario to have to pay for all those taxes on land that basically is protected for conservation.
Wow. Now, can you, as the land trust organization, can you, on your own initiative, go and purchase land?
Yeah. So we actually have a project that we've just started, and it's on the eastern side of the Moraine, where we're looking at trying to protect a little bird that's at risk. And we're working with partners, not only land trust partners, but also partners that are experts in birds and migration. And this little bird migrates up from the U.S. and comes back down through the Great Lakes area. So they need a special kind of soil, and they need a special kind of habitat. So we've been working with the federal government on it's called a Nature Smart Climate Change Fund.
Wow.
And the federal government has gotten into this program and offered it out to organizations that can purchase land. So they're providing some funds to allow us to purchase lands and restore them for specific climate change actions. And along with that, with those climate change actions to restore land, we'll also bring back species at risk. So that's a large program that we have on right now. So if people want to look at how they can help in terms of land without donating their own land, or if they don't have that, that's a way that they can donate as well. So they can go online and you can put something in a, to protect land or something like that in the code. And we will be starting up an actual campaign for that in the new year.
Okay. And what was the name of it again? Because it's huge. That's a very long name.
So yeah, the federal government is a Nature Smart Climate Change Fund. But what we're doing is working in the Eastern Moraine. So it will be likely in the Northumberland area. And we're starting out there in terms of protecting, restoring lands.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so lots of things going on in the environmental world, and of course, what's taking up a lot of our time right now is all of the various changes or proposals that might be coming forward. So I would just encourage people to read those and to respond, or to go out to rallies. There are the Bill 23 was just passed by the government. But there's always an option of repealing a bill if there's enough public outcry.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people, that's only one bill. I think there's a list of another, if I remember, something like 20 other bills that are going to change, that are on proposed for the next couple of months to be changed. So just be involved, read what's happening, send letters in. Call your MPP. Your MPP's office is your representative, and they should be listening to you. You're the ones that elected them, whether you voted for them or not. You're in their riding, and they need to respond to the public perception and concern about what's happening right now.
Well, I just think back to the Pickering Airport situation. I know it seems to be one of the most popular environmental issues. And those people fought so hard and for so long. And in the end, nothing happened. It seems like such a defeatist thing to get involved in. It seems like you'd want to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine. But in the end, are we really going to do any good?
Well, I think that we will. And I think that's where we have to stay positive. We didn't think that the Oak Ridges Moraine Act would come in 20 years ago when I was involved in the 1990s, and we were literally standing in front of bulldozers and having rallies and everything. We were hopeful, and thankfully that happened. This is a big setback, but I don't give up on it. The act is still in place. As well as the greenbelt. And although the government has said they wouldn't touch the greenbelt, they are now doing that. So we need to hold them accountable. People get, into politics for various reasons. They make commitments and promises. And as individuals, we have a right to speak our minds and to advocate for what we think is important. And I think all of us here that in Ontario that love the green space that we have, love the conservation lands, really understand the importance of wetlands and water to our human health and mental health, particularly in the last number of years. It's really important that we let our elected officials know at all levels how important this is to us here in Canada and particularly in Ontario.
Well, I really like Robin Wall-Kimmer when she says that she's the one who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, and she says as long as we keep referring to land and nature as it, we can never respect it. If we refer to it as a personal thing, like she uses the example of your grandmother is in the kitchen making soup, and if you say, "Oh, look at it is making soup. Isn't it cute?" That's such a disrespectful thing. You would never say that. So when we look at a tree or we look at the rocks and the nature and the formations, say, "Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she lovely?" And respect it and take care of it. And then you would want to take care of it because it has a persona that's worth taking care of.
I agree completely. It's a wonderful way to look at the world that we live in, because we are all part of that world, and the world is what sustains and supports us.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a being, may not be a human being, but it's certainly a being, and we need to be respectful and appreciate it. And I think that people do, and unfortunately, it's so oftentimes when you are threatened with things being taken away from you, that you react. And I really hope that people will react and realize how important we need to work together, both as you said, as individuals, as organizations, to protect Mother Earth. And that's the important thing right now, for us and for the future of our families and many generations beyond us.
You know, I take people out. I'm a forest therapy guide, and through expressive arts, we just go into the forest and appreciate all the things and look at it in a different way. But often I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, because the people that come out are the people that already are invested, if you know what I mean. They already love nature, and they just want to be able to be closer to it in many different ways. So how do we reach these people who are sitting at offices and just really worried about their 9 to 5, and life goes on and they don't have time and they're busy with other things? How do we reach those people and get them to love the land and appreciate what the Moraine does in a way that will allow them to participate and speak up?
Yeah, I think that's a powerful question. I don't know that we all have the answer, but unfortunately, like I said, I think adversary and this type of action that the government's taking will make people become more aware. I think we as individuals, figure, at least here in Ontario, it's protected on the Moraine, but it's not.
I guess it's raising awareness, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe starting with the schools.
Yes, that's really important. We've done some school trips, and I know a number of conservation authorities, have used their lands for school trips. A lot of that didn't happen over the last couple of years, and I think that we became more insular and started thinking just about our families and our own health, whereas truly our own health is linked to the health of natural spaces and our environment. And that's where I think we need to focus on that link, that we are, like you said, a part of the world and part of nature. It's not separate from us. And so as long as if we don't start doing that, we don't start realizing we support each other and we need each other critically in order to survive, that there will be a lot more negative consequences as we go forward. Like I said, we're insulated from it here in Canada, but they're seeing very huge impacts of climate change south of the equator, and our world here, with all of our gadgets and cars and pollution and everything else, is causing far more of that for other parts of the world than we are for ourselves yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how big is the Oak Ridges Moraine?
I have to look it up. It's big. It runs from Northumberland County out on the east side of the Moraine by Rice Lake all the way over to the edge of Caledon. It hits the Bruce Trail and the Niagara Escarpment.
Wow. That is huge.
It is giant, and it covers all the regions, towns, municipalities across that area. South into Richmond Hill and north into Simcoe. So massive area.
Wow. And do you know what percentage the Land Trust holds of that massive area?
Oh, very small.
Little.
Our total right now is just over around 5,100 acres in total is protected. So that's very small in comparison to the whole area. What we do have, though, is some, significant pieces. So, like I said, kettle lakes and wetlands and forests. So we try to, when we look and analyze the land that comes forward to us, we do analyze it. We do look at it from a natural heritage perspective. We don't just take any land because our resources are limited. So we do look and try to protect the most significant features on a land, and that will be what we take forward to our board to recommend.
Wow, and it sounds like from a geological point of view, it's almost like we're not just protecting the ground above, we're protecting the ground below.
Very much so. That's where our aquifers are in the water. That's what keeps and sustains life here on the, not just here, but on the whole planet, right? So that's an important part. And Canada in particular has most of the fresh water in the world. So it's really important for us to protect that water features.
Yeah, one of the saddest things I ever heard was a number of years ago when they were using water from the first aquifer of the Oak Ridges Moraine to blow sewer holes through the development in Cornell because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
All those billions and billions of gallons of gorgeous drinking water being used to blow out sewer holes.
I know. It's beyond comprehension,
it is.
Isn't it?
It really is.
And yeah, so we need to change what we're doing. We need to understand how we're impacting not just Canada and Ontario, but the rest of the world by our actions. And we play a part in that. There are land trusts all across Canada. We actually had our first Canadian Association of Canadian Land Trusts conference, and we all came together from across Canada. So municipalities and provinces all have land trusts, and we're all trying to work together in the best way we can. We know we aren't having a huge impact yet, but we are impacting areas all across Canada to try to protect key significant features and make a difference. And people can do that by getting involved with their land trust. They can do that by coming out to events. They could do that and help us monitor and steward a property. And we have property stewards that come and volunteer their time. They'll love what they do. They'll learn, and they'll feel like they're part of helping the world to come to a better place.
Wow. And it must be quite a challenge for you guys to be dealing with all the different government levels. You do have provincial government involvement, obviously. We've just seen that in its flying colors. Federal government involvement, municipal government involvement, and then the government of people who own properties.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers. And for me, I started out in advocacy, like I said, prior to the Oak Ridges Moraine Act as an individual. And so I've learned over the years that the people that are in government, our representatives, are truly just people, and we need to educate them if they don't understand why it's so important. And then there are so many of them that do understand how important it is. And I think we're seeing that right now with this bill. You're seeing a lot of municipalities reaching back out and saying, no, we don't want this. How do we deal with this? How do we change this? And it's good to see. I think we just need what happened in the past was where people rose up, individuals rose up throughout all of the areas, mainly in Richmond Hill. That was the biggest event, I think, that kind of changed the minds of people at the time. We don't want this to happen. And luckily, at the same time, the government was putting together a plan to protect the Oak Ridges Moraine. So that hasn't changed. So it concerns me that, like I said, the conservative government that was the one that was leading that protection of the Oak Ridges Moraine in the early 2000 and put that act in place with all party support is now removing some of those protective features. And I don't understand. And I think many Ontarians don't understand the reason why.
No, it has just to do with money and development. I mean, we spent so much money over COVID, we as a province, as a nation, and they're trying to recoup some of that, and they can't do it off the back of conservation. They just can't.
Yeah. You're right.
Anyway,
You're right.
That's just my opinion. Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your candidness and your education, because that's what this is all about. And if people want to know more information about the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, how do they find you guys?
They can find us by going online at oakridgesmoraine.org.
Okay.
And our website is there. You can see our events there. You can learn more about us. You can learn how you can get involved. And if you so wish, you can also donate. There's a donate page as well. So
perfect. And you know what? At Christmas time, sometimes at this holiday time of the year of gift giving and things, for the person who has everything, maybe you can make a donation to the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust in their name. And that's a lovely thing to do.
That's a wonderful idea. I started with my children and my family back when they were, I think, around 5 years old. And we started picking charities to give to as a family, and them as children. They still do that now as adults. They still, we sit down as a family and they say, I'm looking after this charity, and I'm sending something to the land trust to protect land too, Mom. And I said, you know what? All I want you to do is to look at the world and see how you want it to be when you grow up or when you have a family, and look at all of the different charities that are out there. And if hopefully the environment is top of the list, because without a good environment and places to live, it becomes almost impossible to live in the world. So very good action, I think, for parents to take, both as individuals, but also to educate their children about what's happening in the world. And we're all here to leave the world a better place and for the next generation. So this is a good time to educate them and hopefully support charities that are protecting the world.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time, and go forth and save the Oak Ridges Moraine.
We can only do it with the help of everyone else.
Right.
So help us.
Thanks for tuning in to Freshwaves today. We've been talking with Mark Carroll and with Susan Walmer of the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. These lands are precious lands to all of us. We can't rebuild them, so let's not destroy them by building on them. Get involved. Find out more about the Oak Ridges Moraine, about the greenbelt, and about your province. This is our Ontario. This has been Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and we'll talk to you again next week on Fresh Waves.